Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. Here you will learn all things related to healing from divorce, mind, body, and spirit, so you can create a beautiful new life filled with happiness. I'm Rachel Ruby, author of Divorce to Bliss, divorce coach, speaker, and attorney, and I'm so glad you found me here. Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. I'm Rachel S. Ruby, and today we are going to be talking about shadow work. If you don't know what that is, stay tuned because it is really important to understand it so you can use it in your healing process. My guest today is Junie Moon, and she is the CEO of Midlife Love Out Loud. She is a global love mentor. She is a best-selling author, a women's empowerment leader, and certified shadow work coach. She has supported thousands of women over 30 years span to claim what she says is their birthright, which is the freedom to be and love themselves without apology. That is so beautiful. Junie is dedicated to guiding women and men as well on a transformative journey toward self-discovery, empowerment, and next level love by learning to nurture the love within. So welcome to the podcast, Junie. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
I'm excited too. Thank you for having me. It's my favorite thing to talk about. And I just love being able to support women around the world with this message. So yay.
Yeah, thank you. It's much needed. So let's dive into shadow work because a lot of people don't know what that is. So why don't you tell us what shadow work is, and do we all have shadows?
Yes, I will tell you. And yes, we all do. Let's talk about what shadow is, and then we can talk about what shadow work is. So the shadow is a term coined from Carl Jung, and it's the part of us that we want to hide. It's the part of us that we want to disown and go, oh, I don't want to be like that. That's a bad quality of mine. Let me not show that. And so when we're born, we have a full spectrum of possibility in personality, and we're not censoring ourselves. We're just who we are. Mm-hmm. And then life happens, and our well-meaning parents and our culture and our teachers and kids down the block, we're getting messages on how to fit in, how to be loved, do this, don't do that. And we're sponges as kids. So like the first 7 years, we are learning how to survive, and it's not a conscious process. And what's happening, and we call this the risk manager in my work, that there's a part inside of you that's assessing, is there danger? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to survive? It doesn't really worry about you being happy. It worries about you getting through the day and not being kicked out of the tribe, so to speak. That's what we're bumping up against, is that old wiring. And so the shadow is the part of us that we have decided is just a part that we are not going to show. And sometimes we cut off parts that are really, they're all valuable. Let me just say that right now. So we might think, oh gosh, yes, of course we don't want to be angry. We don't want to be know-it-alls. We don't want to be greedy. We don't want to be lazy. You know, we have these words that we're like, oh, I never want to be like that because I'll be judged or disliked or, left. And there's also, sometimes we throw away really yummy qualities like our creativity or our childlike spirit and wonder, because somewhere along the way, we got a message that it was not safe to be like that. Mm-hmm. So shadow work helps shine a light on these blind spots because they are behind us. Shadows behind us. We've on some level said, I'm not even going to look at that anymore. That's not part of me, but it is part of us. And that's why we do the shadow work, because 95% of our brain is unconscious. 95%. And that percentage of the brain is what's in control of all the things that you think you want and desire, but you keep tripping yourself up with old behaviors and old patterns because of the shadow. So we'll talk more about shadow work in a second, but let me just say shadow work helps bring to light that which you've disowned so that you can get the gold out of the shadow, because we throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm going to stop right there and see if you want to ask any questions, and we can dive a little bit more deeper into what that means.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. And I it's so interesting to me how as humans, we are so shaped by what others think, by what we've been taught. A lot of time, subconsciously. I mean, since we're little, it kind of like with divorce, there's such a stigma with that. And I think that contributes to burying those feelings you might have. You're going through divorce. It's, oh my gosh, I'm a bad person, or I'm quitting. I'm a failure. I'm whatever, because we've been conditioned, like you said, by family, culture, religion, society. This isn't talked about that often in my realm, at least in this healing realm. And I think it's so necessary. It's so needed to really dive deep and take a look at what those things are. Would you say that? So a lot of those shadows are based, or the reason we hide them, or we don't explore them, is because of fear, right? Because of fear and because of stigma, being judged.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's all about fear. It's all about pain, avoiding pain, and not being hurt by someone. I forgot the second part. It's all right. It's so much of it is fear, and that's our wiring for survival. Right. And with your population with divorce, we do get a lot of messages, even in, I said that as we were kids, but as an adult, I remember when I was leaving my husband, he gave me how could you do this?
Same.
And in that moment, I felt like I was such a bad person. I knew it was the right thing to do. He actually thanked me years later. However, in that moment, my stomach was in knots, and I just felt like such a bad person for calling it, for I can't do this anymore. And that's the setup. We don't want to be that person. We don't want to disappoint other people. And when it comes to love and relationships, oh my God, there's so much heat in that realm. I mean, I had this one client, and oh my God, I'm like, my mind is like, oh my God, I want to tell you this, and I tell you this. I had this one client come to me, and she was finished with divorce and really was ready to put herself out there. At least she thought she was ready to put herself out there. It was a couple of years, and she so deeply wanted to have a partner, and she knew what she didn't want, and she had a sense of what she did want. But she still wasn't putting herself out there. She had so much fear around dating. And yet she so wanted to have that yummy, special partner. So we did the shadow work. And again, we'll talk about that in a moment, where we did a special process to help her see beyond I'm not going online. I'm lazy. I don't know why. And we were able to trace, and some people don't remember their past. Doesn't matter. But she did remember when she was 15, 16, that she started dating boys, and her father shamed her and really called her some pretty bad names around being a young lady. You don't do things like that. And she got a message that being with boys is bad and dirty and not something to feel good about. And she felt that judgment and pain from her father's message. So again, she was able to remember that. But that's where most therapy ends. It's like, oh yes, my dad shamed me, or my mom was critical. So we understand it, but how do we change it? Right. And so when we do these special processes in shadow work, we pull out the shadow and we transform it so that she can release that connection to that memory with her father and go, yeah, my time right now, who I am right now, has nothing to do with him. And she was able to separate it, release it, and have the confidence and the healthy boundaries and the excitement to get back out there. She met a guy a couple weeks later. She was with him for a while, but ultimately wasn't her fit after working with me. And then she found her soulmate, and is she married yet? She's close to being married. I don't know if she's married yet, but this is what happens.
I got chills.
We hold ourselves. Yeah. I know, right? Yeah. I got chills that are multiplied. We hold ourselves back and we blame ourselves and we beat ourselves up and going, why am I not better? Why am I not more, putting myself out there and happy, or whatever it is that we shame ourselves with? And we tear ourselves apart, and it's not our fault. It's the programming, and we need to deprogram so we can move forward and feel rich and alive and happy, whether we have a partner or not.
Right. And gosh, that also resonates so much. And I love your client's story, because that is really what it's all about, is just realizing that it doesn't matter where any of that came from or, whether you remember it or not. And as long as you realize that you are in control, of your life, and so yes, to get past that and to understand how to deal with that and to move forward is a huge step. I mean, someone just commented the other day on a post I wrote about forgiveness, and she said, I don't need to forgive or forget. That's your opinion or something like that. And I thought, wow, she's poor lady. I mean, I don't know
she's
her
stuck.
story. I know her story, but she's stuck because she's not willing to take control of the reins, so to speak. And sometimes that means diving into, why are you holding on to that, like anger, hurt, whatever it is? Why are you holding on to that negativity? Because that lives in your body and it lives in your spirit, and you cannot progress. It's like you have to throw it up. You have to purge that stuff.
Literally.
Yeah.
And we have these stories. She's got a story that,
yes.
somewhere along the way, she learned forgiveness maybe is weakness, or they don't deserve that, or whoever was in her ear.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, she might go, oh, that's actually not, that is just a story. And I want to say something else you said about we have control over our lives. Mm-hmm. We actually don't until we do this work, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well,
because all the 95% is running our show. And so our fear is in the driver's seat and we're in the passenger seat. And so I see so many people that are like either moving toward divorce, questioning their partnership on the other side of divorce. And they're at the mercy of all the old beliefs. Yes. And that's why there's pain. And that's why people suffer so much.
And you're right about that. And so I want to kind of amend what I said, that yes. And I always tell people that we can have control. We should be the ones in control because, and that's why we do the healing work. Just like, I think shadow work is definitely part of healing, is just diving in and figuring out what the heck, where did these sentiments, these feelings, these, rules come from that are kind of like imprisoning us in our own body, mind, and spirit. Yeah. So definitely we need to do the work, because once you do the work, you realize like, hey, and, anyway, I could keep going on, but I'm going to ask you another question. So,
let me just say that you are right though.
Yeah.
That we are in control and we have choice. And so the choice is, do we wake up? Do we do the work? Do we peek under the covers and go, why am I so hard on myself? Or why am I so terrified of opening up my heart or asking for my needs to be met? We do have control. Yeah. It's just the programming is more in control until we wake up. So you are right. And we need to wake up.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many parts. There's so many parts to healing. And I always say that each individual is different. Some people need different modalities, different parts of it to complete their journey to love themselves, because that's the ultimate goal, is to love yourself. Because I know you preach the same thing. And once you love yourself, that's when you can have that phenomenal relationship. That's when you can turn your life around. That's when you find your bliss. And people always say, well, how do I find that? I'm like, well, you're not going to find it. It's just like, when I started dating, people said to me, well, because I didn't do any of the online stuff, but that's just my personal thing. And people said, well, Rachel, no one's going to come knock on your door and go, hi, I'm an eligible man who meets all your qualities. Do you want to go out? And I said, no, true, but I'm going to make that part happen in my way. I'm going to go and put myself out there and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so there's different ways to do everything. There's different ways to work on the self. And even two people might be working on, let's say, forgiveness of the spouse or forgiveness of the self, and they might do it in completely different ways. So it's really going to be what they need. And all of that, like you said, programming, conditioning from all the outside forces definitely comes into play in pretty much all of the healing modalities. So anyway,
totally.
Yeah, we got to do it, folks. We can't make a change in our lives unless we do this deep work. It's not going to happen. You're going to stay.
And again, it's a choice. It's a choice. You could stay in the comfort of the pain that the familiar, because there is something to be said about, okay, I know this territory. And there is that fear. And even the word shadow, people are like, oh, that sounds really deep. It
sounds ominous.
Like, I don't want to look at my shadows. And what I say is that, not knowing the monster is way more dangerous than peeking under the covers. Because when you look under the covers and you kind of see, oh, that's what happened, or this is why I'm doing it. It's freedom. It's like you're able to be like, oh my God, I can break through. And it's not like this deep, painful thing. It's releasing. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And what I think is so painful is acting in ways that are not in alignment, falling in partners that don't, deserve you or treat you like the queen you are, but they will treat you the way that you treat you. So this is why we want to do this work.
Yeah. So true. And, I was just going to go off on another tangent, but we'll leave it at that because this, again, this has like tentacles that reach into so many different parts of healing. Right. Yeah. And we both have probably hundreds of stories that we could share. But anyway, let's talk about, so can you get a little bit into, without giving away, obviously and everyone's different, how we discover the shadows? And we've already talked about why it's important when you're healing specifically from a divorce, but how can you maybe, I don't know, like I said, I know everyone's different, but how do we figure out what that is?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there, look, if it's in shadow and there's a blind spot, it does help having a practitioner to guide you. It just does. Because she could, like my client, she couldn't see it. I've had, and again, lots of stories around people that couldn't see why they were doing what they were doing until I helped facilitate it. However, there is something that you could do right now. And I always say, I call it the enemy list. Like if you take a piece of paper out and you write down every single person that gets under your skin, that's, people that really annoy you, people that you don't want to be near, like that person that walks in the door and you're like, oh my God, I hope they don't see me. I hate people like that. Ooh, so start, right? So you start to make
it's a negative exercise. Ooh. Negative energy exercise.
But this is a way to do it on your own, which is what are the qualities or the characteristics? So you don't have to make the enemy list. You could just think of characteristics of people that get under your skin. Like, I hate know-it-alls, or I really hate arrogant people. It's kind of the same thing, right? Like I said before, I really hate aggressive people or people that are lazy. These are a lot of the common things that I hear. And so if you think about what quality really gets to you, there's some healing to be had there. So let's just use laziness as an example. So let's just say, oh yeah, Junie, like when I think about it, when I see people that are just not following through, or they're just not making any money, they don't have a job, or whatever their judgment is, people that you judge. When I am looking at these kind of people that have no motivation, I'm like, ew, I don't like people like that. And these people that are noticing that most likely are workaholics or people that are working so hard in the negative shadow. Because if there's a charge in one way, there's usually the other side of the coin. That which you disown, oh, I don't like lazy people, then what are you going to do? Be the opposite. I'm going to do whatever it takes to never look like that because that's icky. Yeah. But now you're acting out of shadow because you can't cut off shadow. It's part of you. And so you've thrown away laziness and now you've become somebody that doesn't know how to relax, doesn't know how to do self-care, that can just kind of go, you know what? There's too much on my plate. I'm going to create a different environment for my work, whatever it is. Right. So what happens then, and this is the baby with the bathwater, when we throw away throw something in shadow like laziness, we're throwing away the energy of laziness. And inside that shadow is the gold of being able to relax. So when you do shadow work, you start to reclaim the energy, and then you can choose consciously how you want to be in with that energy. So that's a way to learn like what's in shadow. And then you can ask yourself, where did you learn that? Because typically, I learned I don't like lazy people because my dad was always on the couch drinking, didn't have a job, and my mom had 3 jobs. And so maybe you identified with mom and now have an 80, 90 hour work week, but you feel good about it because you're not like dad, but that's not healthy either. So that's how you start to look at it is, that's the easiest way is what word, what quality, what way do you find yourself going, oh my God, I hate people like that?
Yeah.
And that's a good way to know what's in shadow.
It's the trigger. What's the trigger? And that's, I've never really thought about doing that. And that's an interesting thing because, yeah, that's very interesting. But I don't know. I think some people, I'm a type A. I've been that way all my life. And both my parents worked very hard. So I don't think it came from there. I think a lot of my type A came from my own self-worth and confidence that, but also I had some bullying issues. I just thought of that, in middle school and high school. And so that kind of further pushed me into that, those
look out world.
Yeah. Like, here I come, right? I'm gonna, yeah. So anyway, there's so many, things.
And you said about your parents working hard. So here's something to look at, which is, they worked really hard, but did they work effectively and with a balanced way? Or did they work really, really hard? And this is what we do. We identify with our parents and we put them on high pedestals. And so we sometimes become our parents. How many times have we said things like, oh my God, I'm my mother? It's the same thing with admiring qualities about them because they are our parents. And so sometimes we take on different behaviors, different ways of looking at things that may or may not be balanced. So the word hard, it's something to look at, somebody who has excelled, like, oh, I want to excel like this person or that person. These are the words we want to look at and how does it feel in our body? And what are the beliefs we took on by witnessing these things from our parents and the bullies? I was bullied. I took on a belief that I didn't fit in. I better not stand out, or otherwise I'm going to be embarrassed and humiliated. I really needed to get back my voice and my light because I threw that in shadow.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I think, and I did that at that period of my life too, but also, and then I recovered. But at the last, probably, I don't even know, 3 years maybe of my marriage, same thing. Like I just kind of locked my inner child in the closet, I always say. And my voice was silenced because I'm such a fixer. I just thought like, it'll work out. I'll fix it, whatever it is. But I didn't want to go into what is it? Like, why am I feeling unhappy? And I didn't want to go into that until I had.
I know, and a lot of people feel that. Oh, I missed that. What did you say that last thing you said?
Until I had an epiphany. But I had a bunch of signs, but I wasn't listening to my intuition for a long time. And then I went on a trip to Thailand with my daughter, and it was like this. Anyway, I talk about it in my book, but it was a huge epiphany, and that was kind of like the last straw, so to speak. And then I realized, like, Rachel, what are you doing? Your inner child's hidden in the closet. Yeah. You're not listening to your intuition. The signs are like all over the place. The universe is practically slapping you in the face and you're not.
Right. And that doesn't feel so good.
No. And as soon as I realized that, it's like, whoa. And I started doing the work. So it made a big difference. But okay.
And I just want to mention that, that's one of the heartbreaking things I see with women that are starting over or in divorce or after divorce, that they haven't done the unpacking before they go into another relationship. Exactly. And then they just bring their shadow bag from everything that they've accumulated from that past relationship. Yeah. And that's why so many second, third, fourth relationships after the marriage crash and burn. And they might look like somebody different, but there you go. I mean, I have a quiz called Are You Relationship Ready? And I help people see what's in shadow. I help them see what their superpower is because everybody gets a love avatar. But it's like, where are you in readiness? How zoomed in are you with what's in shadow? How are your boundaries? How are you doing self-care? What's your inner dialogue? And I love the quiz because it helps people take a temperature check around where they're at before they jump into another relationship. Yes. Most people go way too soon and don't take time to just come home to their hearts. And like you said, love themselves, really be their inner soulmate.
Yeah. That's great. And we'll put a link to that quiz into your,
thank you.
All of your sites and where to find you at the end. But one thing you said about people just kind of, I especially see it with men. I mean, not to be sexist, but I see it with a lot of men where as soon as they get out of the marriage, they're just like, boom, let's go on to the dating site and let's start dating every woman I can. And I saw it with my former spouse as well. And I tried to talk to him about it. And like, you need to spend some time by yourself. You need to work on you. You need to love you. I do love me, and a lot of people that I speak with will say, I do love myself. But if you look at the actions you're taking, do you really? Because if you're attracting the wrong partner, the people who don't love you or don't respect you or value your self-worth or, whatever it is, all those things that you want to believe about yourself, and maybe you think you do believe those things. But if your partner's not doing those things, you really have to think, because am I worthy of what I want? Do I love myself? Am I deserving? And it's so true, because I've seen it. I can't even count how many times.
It's the biggest thing. It's the biggest thing.
And when I found my partner, there was a lot to that. There was a lot to it always about me. It was all about what I wanted and what I needed. And I didn't know those things until I did all of this work. And once I did all this work, I got to this place where I could make my list of the things that I needed and wanted in a partner. Mm-hmm. And when he came, he checked off every single box. I mean, not that someone has to do that, but it was like, I was just blown away, because that's what I attracted, because I knew who I was. I loved myself. I put me first, and I was willing also to be alone for the rest of my life if that's what it took, rather than be with the wrong somebody.
So many golden nuggets there. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. First one is loving yourself, and loving yourself in action. Totally different. Because a lot of people say, oh, I love myself. But in action, what's the self-care? What do you accept? What kind of behaviors do you accept? How are you treating yourself when something goes sideways? Are you loving to yourself like you would if a little kid fell on the ground? You wouldn't be like, you idiot. What were you thinking? You should look where you're walking. You'd be like, oh, honey, let me dust you off, Mm-hmm. And then also your list. Here's the thing. If you haven't done the healing work and unpacked, so many women come to me and they're like, oh, here's my list. And it doesn't come their way because they are not in alignment. Oh, I want someone who can really meet my needs and listen to me. But if inside they have a voice that's going, nobody wants to hear what you have to say. You aren't worthy of this kind of love. And it's in shadow. And you're like, but I deserve this and I want this, in that 5% of your mind. Yeah. If you haven't unpacked that stuff, it's going to be the same thing over and over. Why is he not showing up for me? Why is he not meeting me heart to heart and having my back? And most of the time, if not all of the time, it's because we don't know how to give it to ourselves. And so and someone just asked me that, like in the last few days, I was at a business retreat. So now I remember. So someone asked me, it's like, if there was one thing that shadow work helps my population with, and it does help with so many things, but what's the one thing? And I say worthiness, knowing we deserve quality men, quality lives. Doesn't matter whether you have a partner or not. And like you said, whether you're on your own or not, you're going to have an amazing life. Mm-hmm. How amazing is that? So we have to do the inner work if we truly want to have extraordinary. And I believe each and every one of us can have it. I see it all the time with my clients and certainly with me.
Yeah. And exactly. I mean, 100% what you said. I think the key takeaway from that is that every one of us is deserving, and every one of us is, our self-worth should be valued by ourselves and everyone else. And if we aren't there yet, that's just a sign that we need to do it. If we're in a relationship where we're not getting those things, that's a sign. So I mean, this is such a great, these are great life lessons. I mean, it's obviously not just someone who's coming out of divorce or has been divorced, but anybody. And so once we do the shadow work and we heal from divorce, let's keep it to divorce, keeping in mind that we're always healing, working on ourselves. Just once you heal, you always have to work. There's always something, right?
Layers.
Life. That's layers and lessons and things like that. So they always happen. But once we've done the shadow work with you, or, figured out what we need to do, and we've grown,
how does love get better? Both love of self and with another. I know this is your specialty, so we kind of touched on that a little bit, but maybe we can dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah. I think it's a great question, and we did start it, and let's go deeper.
Yeah,
because I do want to underline it's a lifelong journey of unfolding and learning ourselves. And it's crazy when you think about it. It's like, here we are wanting to meet somebody potentially, if that's where you're at, or go for a new career or whatever, but we're going to focus on divorce and relationship. It's like, here we are wanting this, but why are we holding ourselves back? Why are we not feeling good about it? Why are we tripping ourselves up? And that's painful. So, so we do the shadow work so that we, again, having choice, and to have deeper relationships, we need to go deeper. So, so if you've had challenges in relationships where somebody cheated on you, or somebody died on you, or maybe you just haven't had a long-term relationship, there's a lot of beliefs around that maybe people don't stick around. Maybe people aren't going to be there for you. My father died when I was 14. I took on a belief that men don't stick around. So I became Miss Independent Queen. So what happens? We start to shut down our heart. We start to build walls around our heart. And we have a challenge being vulnerable, letting people in. So if we're truly wanting to have happiness and the extraordinary, because I'm not about mediocre. I am definitely not about mediocre. I think each and every one of us deserves the absolute best that we aspire to have. And so by doing this work, and over time, like I have a year-long program, it's called Midlife Love Unleashed. And yes, I work with people that aren't in midlife, but Midlife Love Unleashed, it's about unleashing your true essence. Because when you really know yourself and you have the ability to have good, conscious communication, healthy boundaries around that doesn't work for me, or let's have a conversation about how to do this differently. It brings you into a higher level of connection with everybody. And so to dive in deeper into what is it? What's the thing? What's the belief? What's the fear that is creating this reality? Shining a light on that and then claiming it in a whole new way. I mean, when people do these processes at the end of the process, they're just shifted. They're alive. They're excited. They're like, their whole body and their eyes are lit up, and they are different. And it's transformation that sticks because it goes deeply into our being, into our bodies. We embody that change. So we do need to do some sort of unconscious unprogramming what's going on. Otherwise, we really don't get to taste all the delicious yumminess of life. That answer your question?
Yeah.
I kind of went a little in different directions there.
No, that was fantastic. Yes, it does answer the question. And I love the work that you do. And I think this has been a fabulous conversation. I feel like we could keep going, but what I'm going to do is, I have your website. I have, I think on your website, is that where people can find can they go there to take the quiz? Is that something?
They can. Absolutely. Okay. On my website, be sure to take the quiz. Okay. That's also where my podcast lives. There's a bunch of articles. There's a lot there. Okay. Pick and choose what works for you.
Yeah. So midlifeloveoutloud.com. And I'll put the links on YouTube for those who view, and for those who listen. The show notes will have everywhere that you can find Junie, so you can learn more about her and check out her podcast as well. So anything else you want to add about shadow work and love? And I know we've covered so much, but
there's one thing that just came to mind, which is, women are just so amazing. And one of the things that we're really amazing at is doing a lot.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot for a lot of people. And I invite everybody that's listening to carve out some time, not at the end of the day when you've given, and you're exhausted, but really schedule some quality time to slow down and really check in with your heart and ask yourself, how is my life? How am I feeling? And what might need to change? Because awareness is the first step. awareness is the first place to begin to see, oh, I'm actually not feeling great about my body or my health or how I have a relationship with my brother or my mother or whatever it is.
Right.
And to ask yourself, what might it look like if you could have something different in whatever realm you pick?
Yeah.
And how would that feel? And just give yourself some time to be in it. Because if we don't take the time to ask those questions and to really feel and breathe into it, time just flies by. Time just flies by. And we want to get as much out of life as possible, whether you're in a partnership or not. We want to be able to wake up in joy. So that's my final words.
That's a great tip. Those are wonderful final words. And I want to add one thing to that. And I agree with that 100%. That also when you are doing this self exercise, time to yourself to think and whatever, please write it down, write in your journal. 100%.
Yeah.
This is yes, because I always tell my clients and for myself, same thing, even now, when you look back, when you're having one of those moments where you think, oh gosh, I haven't come that far. Where am I? I don't have that love yet, or I don't have that life that I envision yet. If you look back at what you started writing, you'll say to yourself, oh my gosh, I have accomplished so much work, and you'll see that. And that helps you to go forward, and that helps you to feel really good, which is a huge part of healing, right? Is learning to just feel really good about you and what you're doing and what you're working on. So,
oh my God. I don't recognize my life. I really don't. I used to walk on eggshells. I wasn't able to speak my truth. I micromanaged everything. I was a walking ball of fear at 200 pounds and a 5'3" body. So I always say, if I can have an extraordinary life of freedom and love and just, anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. You just have to be willing to take a step.
Yeah, anybody can. So thank you, Junie. I loved having you here. I love the work that you do. And this was such a valuable conversation and so many great points. So hopefully people can take something wonderful away from this and check out what you do. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was lovely. This was a great conversation. Wonderful host. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.